water rinse, 2 gallons. 10 cc's of Clorox bleach. Give it a good swish around in the bleach to get the outside of the inflations and what tubing I can get. Okay, and then we give that a 10-minute contact time. The freshwater rinse, which as I said was a change from the last time we did the video. And the purpose for this is to get all the chlorine out of the inflations in tubing. Gallon of hot water. Shoot for an inflation pressure of around 10 to 12, negative 10 to 12. Okay, I think we're ready to get Miss Goat. So this is what I feed on the milk stand. It's about a half a pound of dairy ration, 16% protein, and alfalfa pellets. And it lasts just long enough for me to get them milked. Cocoa Puff. One of the reasons I wanted to video bringing her in here is so that we could see the breezeway that acts as a buffer between the barn and the milk room. Our goats don't really need the hobbles, but I figure it's better to be safe than sorry. It only takes one good kick to knock the inflation onto the milk stand. Because I've been touching the stand and the goat, sanitize my hands again with the hand sanitizer. First step of cleaning the teat is using these teat wipes. Very convenient. Some people just use warm soap and water, which works just fine as well. When I do this, if it looks like there's been any gross contamination or anything like that, mud, manure, whatever, I get out the soap and water and give it a good cleaning before starting. But our goats are in the barn and they just don't get that way much. This is an iodine teat prep that we use as a pre-milking teat spray. And I thoroughly cover the teats to run off. It must be cold, she doesn't like it. And that sits for 30 seconds. Paper towel. And then one very important step is the stripping of the teats before milking, and that gets any bacteria that have collected around the teat orifice out before collecting the milk, and we just discard that. right now, they're towards the end of their lactation and producing less than a pint per milking, so it only takes about 30 to 45 seconds for the machine to get all the can out, and then I strip the rest by hand, but I don't leave the inflations on any longer than absolutely necessary. So when it's slowed down to a few drops, I go ahead and milk the udder, and that takes another 20 or 30 seconds. Because I've been touching the goat, I have to sanitize my hands again. And this is the post-stripping. And we just do this to completely empty the udder between milkings, which helps prevent mastitis and maintains productivity for a little bit longer. Mostly it's to prevent mastitis, because stasis of milk inside the udder can predispose to that. I don't bother to try to get every last drop out, because she gets impatient and starts getting kicky, and it's kind of counterproductive. So one more cleaning with the teat wipe, just to get any residual milk off that the machine left behind. And then we use for post dip this Fight Back spray. It's very convenient. And the other thing I like about it is, A, it's got lanolin in it, and it's cooling, so it soothes the teats and helps to seal up the orifice a little bit faster. And I just spray that to run off as well. And as you can probably tell, we go through a lot of hand sanitizer. Okay, time for number 2.
Do you want to weigh it, Philip?
Oh yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We weigh our milk for every milking. Even though we do milk testing, I like to keep a little bit more continuous track on it. And today she only did a half a pound. We this nice little form that I built. Helps me keep track without having to write a bunch of notes and everything. And back in the chiller it goes, and ready for the next goat. They know their milking order. Don't you, Katie? Okay, now we start the post-milk cleaning, and I rinse everything off in cool to lukewarm water. And this is the filter I was speaking of. I rarely see anything on these, but there's a little 2-inch filter inside the lid. Very convenient for the initial filtering. Okay. And everything gets a good scrub down with soap and water. This is the remaining bleach water from the initial step. I try not to waste and use it to sanitize this other stuff in the sink. Slippery. So this is a soap and water rinse initially that meant to rinse and cleanse the tubing and inflations initially. This is another step that we added recently because we replaced these claws and inflations and tubing about halfway through the season, but our bacterial went from essentially zero to start to rise again. It never got above threshold, but we started completely disassembling and washing the claws after every milking, and that did make a difference. If I had to pick one source of contamination of our milk, it would be these inflations and claws, because they have dozens of little nooks and crannies where biofilms can develop, and those are just a setup for bacteria. So I think this is one of the steps that has really had an impact. I just run the brush through the inflations several times. All the little parts going over with the brush. I can't get too vigorous because some of these are silicone and fairly soft, but the bristles on this brush are fairly soft as well, so I don't end up with damage to the parts. The manufacturer recommends replacing all these, including the tubing, once a year, but I think we'll probably go with twice a year based on our experience this year. They're not horribly expensive, and twice a year during a 10-month lactation isn't too bad. Oh, lost a gasket. Sometimes it gets snagged up in one of the caps. Doesn't seem to be the case. There it is. And as you can see, when I assemble these things, the definitely a lot of little areas where milk can collect, and just a rinsing process I don't think was actually getting to all of it. So anyway, reassemble the tubing to the inflations. Now, on to the acid rinse phase. Acid rinse, we use Star San, which I don't have the bottle of, but anyway, it's a phosphoric acid rinse. The manufacturer's recommendation is 6 cc's per gallon. And this is a 2-gallon pot, so we use 12 cc's. Recommended contact time for the Star San is 2 minutes, so while that sits and soaks, I start getting ready for the next day. And as I'll show again towards the end, we keep the jars. We sanitize and dry the jars in the oven for about 10 minutes at 200 degrees. It doesn't make them sterile, of course, but it's a good place to store them, and they need to be dry before use. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. Make sure everything's good and dry on the lid. These are the filters. Got a supply with the machine, but we went through those the first year. Fits down into the top of the lid. And this goes in the freezer for the next milk. About 2 minutes has passed on the clock, so one of the really nice things features that they added to this Simple Pulse milk machine is this drying circuit, which just basically blows warm air off of the pump, cools the pump, and also provides a drying cycle for the inflation and tubing. Because they say if it's not dry, it's not clean. Take the remaining Star San in the jar and pot, and make sure that everything that's still here in the sink is sanitized with Star San. It's already had soapy water and bleach. Another change that we made since our last video, which is to change out the chiller water with each milking. It never really comes in contact with the milk, but it's just a potential source of contamination, and it's easy enough to do. That goes in the fridge. In the sink, that's a hot water rinse. The nice thing about this funnel is that this snaps into place and helps hold the strainer from moving around while you're using it. we store this lid in this plastic bin just to keep the dust off of it. And again, we sanitize and dry the jars at about 200 degrees for about 10 minutes. Okay. Finish getting the chiller ready for tomorrow. In the freezer. And the last step is I just wipe everything down. Sanitizing sprays bleach. We are done.